The Winnipeg Jets have won 4 of their last 5 games, but how good is this team? Harrison Lee of Locked On Winnipeg Jets joins us to discuss that and all things Winnipeg Jets next on the Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Gil Martin, so glad you could join us today, and thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, Harrison Lee. And Harrison, the Jets have won 4 of their last 5. Nice win on Sunday. Give me an idea of where this team is at as we pass the quarter pole of this season.
I think the biggest answer is we don't know. The Jets are like 15-7-1 right now, which is a phenomenal record considering, they're down Nikolai Ehlers, one of their best players. And they've had, amongst a lot of the NHL teams, especially towards the first part of the season, they've had one of the hardest schedules of any team. The first couple of weeks were brutal, and so the Jets to be second in the Central, just trailing Dallas by like 2 points, that's pretty amazing, all things considered. But, with this team and where it's at, I think it's really hard to get a read on them. Somebody described them as middling, which I think is an interesting way because they're not so much an average team in the sense that every game is just kind of like a mediocre performance. It's more like they have really great performances at the top, and then the bottom is like, wow, this is really not that much different from the last couple of years where they look like a team that was kind of tanking, right? So somewhere in the middle, that's where the Jets sort of average out. But I think from like a Jets fan perspective, the team's a lot more fun to watch, which is good. I think that when they play well, they play a lot better than some of their best games from the past couple of years. And they're able to do it a little more consistently with the way that they're creating chances. And I think that there's, like, philosophically speaking, a good shift. But I think where this team is at, it's hard to say. I would say we won't know probably until closer to 50 games into the season. Everything, like a lot of the underlying numbers for this Jets squad, on top of like the kind of chaotic individual performances, it's hard to really say that we know for sure where the squad's at. I think it's above average to me personally, but I mean, we still need a larger sample size. It's a weird year for the Jets, and I think Winnipeg is still learning how to be a team under Bowness. I think the shift has been pretty dramatic, and I mean, today, he wasn't really happy with Winnipeg's performance. He was happy about the win, but he said, I don't get paid to babysit these guys. They need to come out into the first period and get stuff done. He said they're all grown adults, and I was like, ooh, all right. Some interesting choice of words. So obviously the Jets are still working on some things, and there is a lot of room for improvement.
One thing that Rick Bowness cannot complain about is the goaltending, or at least the starting goaltending. Tell me about how good that has been, and Hellebuyck just looks very, very solid.
I know I'm biased, and I'm sure that there's some votes for Sorokin and a few other goalies out there. But for me, Hellebuyck this year is currently my Vezina favorite. I think that he's doing a ton of work, particularly on the PK. That PK save percentage of his has picked up a lot. The Jets PK in general has been a lot better, but Hellebuyck just looks really sharp. He's been maybe on some of the best form of his career. I mean, some of the saves that he's making this year are just jaw-dropping. Last year, he had a slightly down year, and he was still like top 10 amongst goalies for goals above replacement and goals saved above expectation, which is just nuts. I mean, he's just a model for consistency that we don't really see from goalies very often. I think somebody looked, from the last 5 or 6 years of players in their goals above replacement value, and Hellebuyck is like 60 above the next closest person. I mean, partly because the Jets concede so much, he has to do a lot more work than most other goalies. He faces like the highest volume of shots. I don't know if it's as stark this year, but based on what he's done so far and how many wins he's racking up, the amount of saves that he's making, the quality of the saves that he's making, I think for me, he is the Vezina winner at the end of the season.
Well, he's certainly off to a very good start in that regard. Is there one player so far this year who has frustrated you the most in his inconsistency?
I guess I want to call it inconsistency, but it is unfortunately a little more consistent. It's Neil Pionk, and he's like a guy I love. I mean, he's one of the few players that I think has, from the beginning, been very vocally accountable. He understands his place on the team, and when the team or himself aren't playing well, he's always quick to identify it. He knows what's wrong. The problem has been kind of translating that into on ice results. And you can actually tell watching him, his body language, his frustration when he makes a mistake. He knows in his head what he's supposed to do. It's just getting it to play out that's been a problem. When he signed his contract extension, there was some risk with it. And there was a concern that the season that he had in the North Division, where he was smoking Connor McDavid every other week, suddenly you're not going to be facing that from the following seasons. Then he got injured, he had a concussion, and after that, he just didn't really seem the same. And a lot of his decision making this year, it's pretty chaotic. I mean, he turns over the puck a lot. He tries to skate through like three defenders. It's just a very odd season for him, and it kind of makes me wonder long term. What is his spot with this team, and does he have a long term place with the Jets? I don't know, but it's been frustrating because on a personal level, I think he's one of the few guys from the beginning who's been really stand up. And you just kind of wish the best for him. He's a super nice guy. He always fights really hard on his shifts, but the results just haven't really aligned with the expectations.
What do you think Rick Bowness needs to do most to get this team to be more consistent? What is he looking for?
That's a tough one because I think with the way that the team is constructed, that's where a lot of the issues kind of lie. And so I don't know how Bowness can really get more out of the squad. I mean, the reality is the front office has to give him more to work with. Forward-wise, he has really good forechecking lines. The bottom six is very good at defensively dominating and also creating chances by crashing the net and using space well. But, the finishing talent we don't have as much of as we used to. The defense, it's, in an okay spot, but I wouldn't say, all of the pairings are doing super well. Brendan Dillon hasn't really been at his best and most consistent. Neil Pionk is struggling a lot. And, off and on, Dylan DeMello, who is one of our most stable presences on this team, he'll have off nights that are a little bit uncharacteristic, but I think he's doing about as much as he can get out of this team. I would like, maybe Kyle Connor to back check a little more. We all kind of know that that's not really a thing that he does, but he's getting more out of Mark Scheifele. He's found a way to make Blake Wheeler still, a potent player. And I think he's done enough to get this team to a reasonable state. At this point, it's kind of on the front office to give him more tools to work with.
And do you think they'll do that before the trade deadline?
That's a tough one. I think they have to do it. Even the local Winnipeg media is saying it. And when the local Jets media is saying it, usually that means that somebody higher up recognizes the problem and has suggested that they're looking at it. I think Vancouver is a natural target. They've got Besser, Horvat, a number of players that they would probably like to send on to better teams. They had 20 scouts or something at the last Manitoba Moose game. So it's clear that there's a lot of folks who know the Jets have a lot of defenders that they could part with. Same for the actual big club itself. I think the question is, do the Jets feel they can be proactive? In my opinion, they definitely should. I think this is the year to do it. The Central is kind of weak. Winnipeg has a team that's kind of getting by with an all right amount of scoring and jaw-droppingly good goaltending. This team deserves better. I think the front office owes it to this squad. So maybe this is the year that they really surprise us and they make a big splash. If they add a major top six forward, I think it would change the way that people look at the Jets this year.
Be interesting to see how it plays out. We have a few months before the trade deadline. Harrison, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
So we have the Locked On Winnipeg Jets podcast, which you can follow our podcast Twitter account at LO_Winnipeg Jets on Twitter. My personal Twitter is at HLLivingLoco. You can follow the podcast on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, same as where Locked On NHL is, Odyssey, YouTube, Megaphone, Spotify, your favorite platforms. And as always, it is free to subscribe.
All right, Harrison, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Today's episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. Our next partner has a product I literally use every day. I started taking AG1 because I'm not a great pill taker and I didn't want to have to take 5, 6, 7 pills to get all the vitamins and nutrition that I wanted. So what is this stuff? Well, with one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all those things. And it's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs or nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills or supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.